Alright, this video is going to go over a different way we could configure outbound NAT. We used to do this in the lab, but I took it out for reasons. But there are quiz questions about it, and in our Kahoot, there will be some router configs with this setup for you to interpret the output. So essentially, the outbound NAT config we did, we created an access list, and then we created a NAT command that referenced that list and told it to use the gigabit Ethernet interface. There might be a scenario where you want to use something other than the gigabit internet gigabit Ethernet interface. So I'm going to show you how you can do that using a NAT pool. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the NAT command that is there. No IP NAT inside. Source list 1 int interface. That says source list 2. Source list 1 interface. GI000 overload. I spelled overload wrong. It's weird that didn't give me an error. So the NAT command's gone, so if we were to test it right now, it wouldn't work. So I said we're going to do it using a pool, and in order to do that, we need to create the pool, IP NAT pool, then we give it a name. I'm going to call it internal pool because we're letting the internal addresses get out. And then we give it a start IP address and an end IP address. So this needs to be an IP address that routes back to your network. So in our case, I gave you a /27 to use for public addresses. So it should be one of those addresses. It makes sense to not use the overload interface IP, because if we wanted to do that, we would just use the interface keyword, and you do not want to use anything you already have a static NAT for. So I still have my static NATs for 10 and 20, so I don't want to use .10 and 20. So you can pick any unused address that you're not using. I'm going to use 7 and then an end address. So if you wanted to use more than one address for your pool, you could do something like 15, and that would use addresses 7 through 15. If you are not going to put the overload keyword on the NAT command, it would only work for that number of hosts. What we're going to do is we're going to use the same IP for the start and finish, and then it wants a net mask, so we'll use the net mask of our outside address, which is 224. I guess I need the word net mask and then the net mask. All right, so that created that pool, and now I need to create a NAT command to match that pool. So it's basically the same command we had before, except instead of referencing the interface, we'll reference the pool. So IP NAT inside source list 1, and then we want to tell it the pool, and then we need to tell it the name of the pool. I called it internal pool, and then overload. We want the overload keyword. So if we look at our NAT config now, we have an access list 1 that matches our inside network. We have a NAT pool that creates a 1 IP address wide pool, and then we have the NAT command that references that pool with the overload keyword. So that is an alternative way you could set up outbound NAT if you had a reason to. And you might be like, "What? Hey, Rich, why would I ever want to do that?" Well, it's probably a pretty specialized situation. The only one I can think of from my history is I had some people I was working for. They changed ISPs, but they kept their old public address space. So when they moved to the new ISP, they got a new public IP on their router, but they kept their same IPv4 address block for traffic getting routed to them. So they had some stuff set up at other sites, so they wanted their traffic to appear to be coming from the same IP address it originally was. So we created a pool that used their old interface IP address that they were using for NAT for that pool address, so that it still looked like their traffic was coming from that IP it used to be coming at, since they kept their public IPs. So yeah, pretty kind of different config you might not ever see or use, but I think it's important that you recognize it exists. And also, we have some quiz questions about it, and I didn't want to get rid of those quiz questions, so now I can keep those quiz questions.